Checking in on health news this morning, a lot of tension right now on the safety on the football field. This after the death of Charles Uvella. He is the Keams Canyon Hopi High School football player who died of a head injury after a game 2 weeks ago. So what can be done to help avoid such damaging and, in this case, deadly concussions? Jamie Soretta takes a look into this.
Marshall again, and he just bowls his way in.
ASU football players take a lot of hits on the field, and researchers at TGen and Phoenix are analyzing every single blow.
We really want something objective that's going to tell us when somebody's concussed and when it's safe for them to go back to play.
Dr. Javier Cardenas of the Barrow Neurological Institute says concussions can be difficult to diagnose because they're so subjective.
We rely on the athletes to provide us the information about their symptoms, about their signs.
But now those athletes at ASU are uniformed with special helmets with sensors.
That tells us the magnitude, the force, the frequency of these collisions.
Every practice, every game, we have someone there.
Dr. Jeffrey Trent of TGen has a team of 40 researchers on the project, about 5 of them at every ASU event. They even travel with the team, watching the Rydell helmet sensor information come in instantaneously.
We particularly focus on the players, the 3 players that have the hardest single hit, and then the 3 players that have the highest cumulative hits over a game.
For the first time ever, researchers are combining that information with samples from the players. They're looking at the players' blood, saliva, and urine for a change in the body that would give a definitive and completely objective sign of a concussion.
The most devastating injuries occur when somebody sustained a concussion and they go back too soon before they've recovered from the injury and they sustain a second concussion.
Researchers hope this study could prevent that in the future by building a concussion detector of sorts right into players' protective gear.
Picture a mouth guard like the players use that might change a different color if they've had an injury.
That was Jamie Soretta reporting. Now, young athletes who get concussions shouldn't just be benched. They should also be kept from home from school. This, according to a report from the American Academy of Pediatrics. The report says kids with concussions may appear physically normal in class, but they could actually be having more trouble learning new things and remembering lessons. Researchers also say going back to school too quickly after a head injury can make concussion symptoms worse. And that is why we are here this morning with Dr. Paul Saphier. He is with the Neuroscience Center over at Phoenix Baptist to talk about the growing number of these types of concussions and head injuries that we're seeing from athletes. It feels like it's getting more known than it was before.
Well, I think our understanding about concussions and trauma related to athletic sports is becoming a little bit more complete. I think, we're understanding that kids and athletes that sustain these concussions actually do have some downstream effects that maybe we don't see right away.
That could come later on in life? And what are we talking about? Something that could happen 6 months, 1 year, possibly into adulthood?
Well, what we know is that it doesn't need to be one massive injury that can affect somebody. In fact, repetitive mini trauma, so to speak, can ultimately culminate in a long-term progressive sort of issue. For instance, the kids that are in high school that need to get into college and have certain aptitude tests and things like that, if there are subtle cognitive deficits, learning slowed down, that we're not picking up on, then those kids may not perform as well on tests.
And we're not here to say you should put your kid into football, you shouldn't, over at Pop Warner League or anything like that. But what should parents be aware of if they decide to put their child on the field? And it's not just football. Head injuries happen in every aspect of sports.
Absolutely. Actually, the NCAA has a list of sports that absolutely mandatory to wear a helmet and protective gear, and then other sports that are recommended to wear a helmet gear. But other sports that we don't necessarily always think about, for instance, field hockey, lacrosse, skiing, snowboarding, things like certainly bicycling, skateboarding. I mean, these are certain activities that, all kids should be wearing helmets for. But some of the warning signs are, maybe students that just feel groggy, subtle things like they say that they feel groggy, they don't feel like themselves. They're not performing as well in school. They just don't quote-unquote get it, if that makes sense.
Okay. And there could be a link to that, and parents might want to brush it off sometimes, thinking, oh, then maybe they're just being lazy and such. What should you be asking your doctor to do?
So if a child participates in any sort of contact sport, and if they start demonstrating some of these signs, lack of, decreased memory, attention, this, that, and the other thing, they should probably be screened at a concussion screening center.
Okay.
And that there's a whole battery of tests that kids can go through, that individuals go through, some of which are endurance testing to see how long individuals can do something without being distracted.
So is it sort of like an assessment test to see if there has been damage done, I guess?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If there has been damage, what the degree of it is, and what sort of steps may be necessary to counter effect that.
What would those steps be?
Usually just rest is probably some of the most important things. Cessating, stopping the type of activity that caused a concussion in the first place. And then if someone has delayed learning or decreased memory or attention, then they may need certain accommodations in the classroom.
Okay. Wow, certainly fascinating, and I know this certainly has a lot of folks' attention, especially the parents out there. So, Dr. Paul Saphier, thank you so much for joining us this morning.